The Nigerian custodial system. The vulnerable state of released inmates or prisoners. The temptation, resistance, and victory.
It is frustrating seeing all the efforts put into releasing inmates go up in smoke.
Yeah, they come out, sometimes into the cold embrace of a hostile world. Sometimes there is no one to receive them.
These people from counseling suffer stigmatization and difficulty in giving themselves back to life. They suffer stigmatization of rehabilitating themselves into the society from whence they came before the disruption of their lives.
It is the same thing with the survivors of human trafficking and the sexually exploited. They leave the country with the hope of a brighter future, but are brought back shattered, in despair and hopeless.
Whenever human persons, out of greed, selfishness, conceit, decide to make use of others for their own selfish purposes, try to exploit others, then you demean the purpose for which God actually created the human person. And so we need to take it out completely.
So it is a good news to let people know that human trafficking is not a way of life. With all the promises that they, of course, those who involve in it, but at the end of it, they gain nothing.
And even when family members or friends manage to turn up, the journey towards rehabilitation is usually impossible without a skill.
And when there is a skill, there is no support structure, no availability of basic trade equipment, and no money to procure them. It is a near impossible situation for the ex-prisoner. He needs shelter, at least temporarily, and skills to help him or her maneuver a society that has increasingly become a place where dreams come to die.
The Nigerian custodial system as at March 2024. Total inmate population 78,621. Total male inmates 76,854. Total female inmates 1,767. Total convicted inmates 24,444. Convicted male inmates 24,000. Convicted female inmates 444. Total awaiting trial inmates 54,177. Awaiting trial male 52,854. Awaiting trial female 1,323. Crime and other antisocial behaviors are as old as mankind and highlights the point of imperfection of the human species. To promote and ensure social cohesion and balance, the society builds special holding places for those whose conduct and activities threaten societal values.
Globally, we may mention the exception of maybe one country or two like Sweden. It's still acceptable that custodial punishment is one of the ways to deal with crime, especially. Of course, we have the civil offenses, which are not basically crimes, but provide for punishment through keeping the person in correctional custody. Okay, but looking beyond the punishment itself, we look at the place where this punishment is being served. How adequate has our correctional centers or facilities been over the years?
The essence of building prisons or custodial centers is not to destroy those in prisons, but to reform them. Sadly, in spite of efforts by the authorities, only an exceeding small number of those who come out of custodial centers end up redeeming their lives. A much greater percentage continue with lifestyles that take them back into prisons.
The accommodation where they stay, they are made to lie on the bare floor, on mats, and they stay so tight in a cell. Many of them told us that the cells, which should be occupied by 15 to 18 people, have 60 people in them. How reformational in nature can that kind of thing be? So if you look at the practical aspect of it, you will see that it is not reforms, rather it is more of dehumanization.
A defective criminal justice system, an unforgiving, unsympathetic, and fearful citizenry, lack of post-prison opportunities, and absence of adequate opportunities have all combined to work against social reintegration of the formerly incarcerated. The narrative must change. New opportunities for redemption must be embraced. Enter the Justice, Development and Peace Center, Lagos Archdiocese of Catholic Church, JDPC, with an ambition like no other and a vision that is unparalleled. The JDPC intends to build the first truly reformative home, a halfway house for those forgotten by society who once lost their way but are now willing to retrace their steps.
This home is to provide succor and a place where they can find their feet before they are reintegrated into society. The rehab home is to also provide skills. They will be able to acquire skills that will be useful to them in life. A place of shelter, a place to rest, a place to be human beings again. And that is why we are calling on all and sundry to join us, to help us to be able to build this very laudable initiative.
Equipped with over 30 rooms for both male and female, a library for those intent on catching up with the development of the intellect, a fully equipped and functioning workroom for skilled impartation and training.
We know that the work of humanity, the work of bringing about good governance, the work of making sure that the voice of the voiceless is heard, can be quite challenging and daunting. And that's why the fundraising aspect is there.
The JDPC has tried to fill the lacuna left by government for the enhancement and betterment of human beings. And that is why this project to build a rehabilitation home for deportees and for returnee prisoners.
It has been a long journey to get to this moment of actualization. The vision for the halfway home and the attempts to turn vision to reality have not been without disappointment and dashed hopes.
The JDPC is in the line or in the course of producing and building and constructing a rehabilitation and a vocational center. Now, this vocational center, you may want to know, has always been in the mind of the JDPC from the time of our beloved Cardinal, the Archbishop Emeritus of the Archdiocese of Lagos, His Eminence Cardinal Anthony Okoje, when this vision was birthed. But along the line, some things had to stall for funding issues and a few other logistical reasons.
This home is to provide succor and a place where they can find their feet before they are reintegrated into society. The rehab home is to also provide skills. They will be able to acquire skills that will be useful to them in life.
There is hope for everyone regardless of their circumstances. It is true that the seed for societal decay is sown by human hands, sometimes wittingly, other times unwittingly. But it is also a fact that the society has within itself the power to self-regulate and the ability to redeem itself. So it is so with those who find themselves at the bottom of the ladder, such as ex-convicts or inmates, as well as victims of sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. After all, if Mary Magdalene and the thief on the cross could find last-minute redemption, who then can be immune from God's mercy if they open up their hearts?
We know full well that there are a lot of persons who, for want of maybe man's inhumanity to man, have found themselves in very underprivileged and disadvantaged positions in the society. We have a lot of destitutes. We have our friends, our brothers and our sisters from the correctional facilities who have been set free, and sometimes they find nowhere to go. They find nothing to do. We also get to read in the news every now and again the migration processes that take place in the country and how certain of our brothers and sisters are being repatriated and brought back to the country from the Middle East, from Libya, parts of Africa, and of course from Europe. Now, sometimes these persons come back and they are lost at sea, not knowing exactly what they should do. Now, this rehabilitation center is a stopgap where we bring these persons together and train them and let them know that all life is not lost. There is hope for a better Nigeria, and they can make good use of this center to further benefit themselves. It is a center that in its conception had the mind or the thought of bridging the gap between the correctional facilities and the center, putting it simply, from prison to society.
JDPC's Half Home is set up to do one part of what a custodian center is supposed to do, and that is the reformation of the dejected and abandoned after society has imposed its legal punishment on them. This reformation must be followed by reintegration back into the society, and it also applies to victims of human trafficking for sexual purposes.
These young people will not be like gunpowder that we are sitting upon and that will explode and cause much more confusion in the nation.
My word of encouragement to you to be one, to not to lose focus, to be determined on what they want to do with their lives, and not to be used by any person for their selfish interests at the detriment of their future and their life.
Unfortunately, the nature and character of the country's socio-political system seem to make these achievements of this noble objective almost impossible.
In the past 6 months, my organization, for example, has released over 50 people in different correctional centers in Lagos State alone. And once they are out, we take them on and we get their stories recorded. And part of our questions to each of them is, how adequate are the facilities where you stayed? Some of them stayed 2 months, but some stayed more than 5 years. We've had situations in the past 8 to 10 months where we released someone who stayed about 8 years without trial, and then someone who the court gave order for his release in 2021 but was now released in 2023. So he stayed extra 2 years and 1 month. In all of these instances, we ask them, how adequate is accommodation, feeding, Medicare, recreation? These are the things that should be basic. They are not yet reformatory in nature. When you talk of reforms, you are now talking of something beyond the ordinary.
The increasing importance of non-governmental organizations to the overall running of the society cannot be overemphasized. Serious governments, especially in growing democracies, increasingly welcome their interventions in the various thematic areas of their engagements.
It takes a person who came in there with a sound mind. It takes that person from soundness of mind to something else. Many of them get out from there not happy, having revenge at the center of at the core of their soul.
From governance issues, healthcare, social welfare initiatives, the criminal justice system, human trafficking, etc. They have continued to complement the activities of governments over the years. The present rehabilitation home of the JDPC is one of such efforts.
The 10th of May too is a day we are setting aside to raise funds, to complement and to further carry out the task, our primary responsibility of spreading the gospel of God's grace to the nations, to the world, to the ends of the earth, especially within the confines of Lagos State.
A place of shelter, a place to rest, a place to be human beings again. And that is why we are calling on all and sundry to join us, to help us to be able to build this very laudable initiative.
The JDPC wants to set a precedent that it hopes others, such as governments, corporate institutions, and philanthropists, would emulate. The body wants to send a message to the rejected and dejected in the society. We have your back. Do not despair. That message is a halfway home. But this can only happen when similar charity-minded individuals and entities identify with this objective to turn a long-nurtured dream to reality.
The Osun-Osogbo Sacred Grove in Osogbo, Osun State, southwest Nigeria, is one of the last remnants of primary high forest in southern Nigeria. The site, a natural habitat that has been preserved for over 400 years, has served as both a pilgrim point as well as a tourist center for millions of people who visit the site annually to worship and celebrate the Osun goddess that is believed to inhabit the river that runs through the grove, giving the water the ability to heal and grant wishes of its believers.
Osun Grove happened to be a site that we all refer to as a living site. It's a living site just because activities that have been carried out over the years are still performed the way it used to be then. And secondly, it is a site where the worshippers do come to perform every 5th of the day, which means 5 days. They do come. For example, in churches, we go to churches during the week, but on Sunday, we christen it to be, we go to church on Sunday. Likewise, the Muslim goes to mosque on Friday. So despite the fact that the devotees do come interval, but they have a 5 day, which they call Ojose. Aside this, the uniqueness of this site is the name Osogbo was derived from this site. The appellation of the king was derived from this site.
From the entrance One could feel the tranquility that comes with the well-preserved forest. A little further down comes another feeling of an elevated being's dwellings. This is the Osun Osogbo Sacred Grove, one of the last sacred forests in Nigeria, along the banks of the Osun River, just outside the city of Osogbo, Osun State, southwest Nigeria. In this forest of 75 hectares of undisturbed areas of land, no residential building is allowed, no killing of any kind of animal, no fishing, no hunting or felling of trees.
Apart the fact that it is 75 hectares of the core zone and 47 hectares of the buffer zone, is one of its kind in sub-Saharan Africa and the second UNESCO World Heritage Site in Nigeria. The kind of people or crowd that comes around, one would be marveled why this. But it is a festival and a river that people believes in. Because of the sacredness, you can't cut a tree, you can't fish. And if you are not a devotee, there are certain activities you don't do so that you don't blame yourself.
The one path that cuts right through the grove is lined on either sides with sanctuaries, illustrations of traditional Yoruba deities and primary high forest. Adekunle Olatunji is the curator and site manager of the grove that has existed for over 4 centuries. On a tour of the sacred forest, Olatunji describes how the name Osogbo came about and what the grove stands for.
At Ipole, some kilometers from here is in Iboku. There's an hunter. It's not just an hunter that going to the bush to kill rat, or is a big hunter that hunts for elephants, bigger animals. In one of his sojourn, then from Ipole looking for where they can get water, they now got to this site. On getting to this site, he was astounded. We were looking for almost a 40 kilometers from here, looking for water, still large water here. So he decided to go back to inform the king. My brother, we are hunting, I got to his place and I saw this river. So the hunter then was Oguntimeyin, while the king then at Ipole is Laroye. So the two of them came down to the site, seeing what they wanted. So they decided to settle down at the bank of the river. So in one of their trying to rent the tent, a tree now fell into the river. And a voice came out of the river saying, Enyoma Darewolo, you have broken my time, but 84 Kokwa. So everybody the two of them were so shocked. Who is this person? Simultaneously, the spirit now answered, Osogbo Pele, Osogbo Rola, Osogbo Pele, Osogbo. That was when they knew they are in Osogbo. Literally meaning Osogbo. So now, they now felt, what is the next thing to do? In Yoruba then, something strange happened. You do divination. During their divination, they wanted to know what's happening. So the Babalawo now said, Osun dwell here. You cannot stay with Osun. So they moved from the bank of the river, moved up. They now built a hut. That hut today is what we call the first palace. And there's these promises between them that if we say we should leave this place, as a powerful person, they felt, how will somebody in the river be telling us to leave? So if we are to leave, what will you do for us? And I said, okay, if you are to leave, I will make you prosper. There is no war that will conquer you. Do my bidding, and every year there must be somebody from your lineage to come and bring object of appeasement to me every year.
But the grove wasn't always this beautiful and serene. In fact, there was a time it was completely infested with termites until an Austrian artist, Susan Wenger, and her husband Uli Bayer arrived to save the sacred monument. Wenger devoted some 50 years of her life to preserving the forest, and with the help of local craftsmen in the city, she transformed the sacred grove into a sculptural garden, with compelling artworks and objects of habitation. Because of them, this 200 acres is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
When Mama started with the Osun Groves, she started at the area we call Ayedakun. Ayedakun is also part of the groves. Our first two sculptures are still there, where we have Obatala and Yemo. And she did that, not in one place, at the main shrine, Ebu Yamako, and inside the forest there are the sculptures there that she made. And Mama would do the heart with meditating, like communication with the deity before doing any form of art. And Mama got her inspiration, from there because she stayed there for a while.
She was invited to come and see or assist us in treating this termite attack. In doing that, she now fell in love with the culture. So she is so powerful and mystic that if she sleeps, revelations of what she is expected to do for this place will come to her. Then she now felt, for somebody of her status, there's a need for her to have people to work with. Then she now got in touch with the Oba. Then there and then some interested indigene that were into art then were introduced to her. So that was why they formed what we call a new sacred art movement. With this new sacred art movement, from instruction from her, that's why we have all these structures.
Shaded by a canopy of trees with a flight of stone leading downwards, the inner grove lies within a natural depression, marking the exact spot where the first palace of the founder of Osogbo was located. The ancient palace with its ornate pillars and elegant designs has remained in its original state for decades, and its sacredness upheld for as long as it stands. A short walk away from the palace will take you to the Osun River, which on a normal day looks just like any other river except for the utter stillness that pervades the atmosphere around it and the occasional calving in the midst of its waters. Otherwise called the Herbs of Osun, because according to its devotees, this calm flowing river transcends ordinary water. Everything about the Osun Grove revolves around this river. It's like the life of this place. You take it away, the entire place becomes lifeless. This is where the history of the grove actually started from. And every year, thousands of devotees of the Osun goddess converge by the bank of this river, where they pray, believing that all of their problems will be solved by the goddess.
If it is just a mere river, why the crowd? If it is just a mere river, why are people taking this water? I'm using this water in context because here we don't have river, we don't have water. Please, we don't have water. Once you are here, you want agbo, herbs. People that needed one thing or the other comes here to seek for assistance from Osun goddess. Believing, as I said, it's your faith. Believing he or she will do it for them. Whatever is being taken here is herbs, is agbo. If you take it with your faith, be you me, you'll be healed. It has been proven beyond reasonable doubt.
While the grove is the site of Osun's most sacred shrine, many Yoruba deities are also depicted here with sculptures that are centuries old and shrines where their devotees worship. Despite the sanctity attached to it, managing the grove is not without its own challenges.
There's no lumber that will come into this site that will not pray will sleep off 72 hours. So that before we wake up, we would have cut down all the trees. We do have poachers, and despite the native laws that we do use to operate, because here you are not supposed to hunt. If you are caught, you'll be taken to the enforcement agency through the authority of Osogbo. And because of developmental pressure, as the town grows, you are bound to see people wanting to build closer to the site, thereby giving you problem. You have a challenge, but God is helping us through that native law. That native law, don't cut, don't fish. And aside that, the native law, I will tell you authoritatively, because if all of us goes home, we have night security if they are here. If you eventually decide that you want to catch any fish, you will cook it from now till that kingdom come, it will not done. So you will definitely put yourself into trouble.
Once sparkling and clear and home to a variety of fish, today the sacred river is murky and brown. It is now under constant threat from pollution from waste disposal and other human activities. Another fascinating thing about the grove is this standalone suspended bridge right at the heart of the forest and just above the Osun River, built some 87 years ago. The bridge has no pillar holding it because they say the Osun goddess forbids it. One of the unique things to see at the grove is this suspension bridge. We understand it was built in 1935, commissioned in 1936, and the reason why the bridge was constructed was to enable people around here move goods now, especially palm products, from one end of the bridge to the other. And up till this day, the bridge is standing. It's one bridge a lot of tourists who come to this area love to see. Despite the gradual fading away of celebrated African culture and tradition, the Osun Osogbo Sacred Grove is one cultural phenomenon that has not only stood the test of time, but also become a reference point for people from this part of the world. The grove remains more or less pristine, leaving visitors with this sense of peace and a connection to the dwellings of an elevated being and the ancient Yoruba tradition. Inspecting his ruined ginger farm. Elisha Handan is one of the big ginger farmers in the Sarbon Serki area of Jaba local government area of Kaduna State in northwest Nigeria. Virtually all the ginger in his 4-hectare land here have been hit by a strange disease which is causing the leaves of the ginger plant to turn brown, dry up and then die.
Early April, the ginger was doing well, germinated well, doing well. When I applied the first fertilizer or the first application of fertilizer, the ginger grew very effectively and very well. Suddenly, I started to spot out some symptoms of disease. I thought that it's a normal, maybe shortage of rain. I never knew there's a menace. Before I know, the whole farm was affected. And not only in this farm, but all of my farms, out of about 4, all of them were affected.
It's the same story for Joseph Jatu, another ginger farmer in Jama'a local government area of the state. His entire ginger farm has caught the same disease, sparing only the vegetable he'd planted within the farm.
We are suffering a lot of loss, especially in this particular part of the world where we produce a lot of ginger. That is the mainstay of our economy, is now nowhere to be found. That the sustainable aspect of it is ruined by this infection. You can see we have abandoned this farm. We are not within it anymore. You can see the grass because we are discouraged.
Nigeria ranks among the largest producers of ginger in the world, and southern Kaduna accounts for the bulk of Nigeria's fresh ginger production. Almost every farmer in the region of the country grows ginger on a commercial scale. The current ginger disease will therefore seriously impact the local economy of the area, as this year's harvest is already affected.
We are pleading for an intervention.
if there is any preventing method or measure that the government will take, please, they should intervene.
At the Institute for Agricultural Research in the state, scientists are hard at work trying to understand the disease and come up with a solution. But there's no definitive breakthrough.
Actually, the organisms we are suspecting, like most fungi, when the environment is moist, there is high relative humidity, low temperature, the organisms are favored. And we are suspecting there are multiple fungi, as I showed you here. So, but the specific one was still on. So that is what we are doing. From the interview and from what we saw, we gave them some suggestions on what to do to remedy the rhizomes that are in the soil. And possibly we are planning, or if we get opportunity, of course we have to train them or explain to them what measures should take against the next season.
Most diseases of agricultural crops are best managed culturally by rotating the crops on the fields. If you grow one crop on a particular field year in, year out, there is a build-up of the disease inoculum that will get to a level that it explodes. In other words, it causes a severe damage on the crop. So the Kaduna State government is making arrangement to sensitize or train the farmers on how to manage their fields.
As they wait for a definitive pronouncement from the Institute for Agricultural Research, the farmers are now getting some helpful information on the likely cause of the disease. One of the big corporate farmers in the area has been holding special sessions like this one to further train and enlighten the farmers of best farming practices to prevent the disease.
Now, when we went around the farm, we discovered that because some farmers don't have so much land, some of them even grow ginger year in, year out. Under good recommendation, you don't grow ginger like that. And so if you are growing it year in, year out, you are going to aggravate the development of those diseases. And that is why it has happened to this level.
So what we would have to do, the reality, is to, of course, re-sensitize the farmers on the inputs they use. Now that this has been activated, next year, it will still happen again. The best solution to this, the truth, if wishes were horses, is to abandon that land for 2-3 years. That is the best. 2-3 years, don't do anything on that land. That would be the best. Then come back in the 4th year and do it.
The farmers are hoping that what they learned from this seminar, in addition to advice from the Institute for Agricultural Research, will help them overcome their current challenge. Deji Badimasi, TV 360, Lagos.